It's open house for the Civil Aeromedical Research Institute, commonly called CARI. CARI is a branch of the Federal Aviation Agency's Aviation Medical Service and is located at the Aeronautical Center in Oklahoma City. Visitors to the new building find 4 floors of modern architecture, beautifully finished, yet practical in every respect. The entire building and all its facilities were designed with a twofold purpose in mind: to foster the growth of civil aviation and to make civilian flying safer through medical research. Outside, the dedication ceremony gets underway with music by the University of Oklahoma Band under the direction of Dr. Gene Bross. Twenty-one foreign students of the FAA Academy present the International Parade of Flags. The United States Color Guard is from the Army's 95th Infantry Division. Master of Ceremonies for the dedication is Dallas Rensel, former administrator of the Civil Aeronautics Administration. Mr. Rensel introduces the honor guests. Archie League, the Assistant Administrator for the FAA Southwest Region. E.K. Gaylord, publisher of the Daily Oklahoman newspaper. Robert Luttrell, Oklahoma City Manager. Robert Shank, Deputy Administrator for Development, FAA. The Mayor of Oklahoma City, James Norrick. Dr. Stanley Moeller, Chief of the Aeromedical Research Division and Director of CARI. Dr. William Albers, Chief of Aeromedical Standards Division. Dr. Peter Siegel, Chief of the Aeromedical Certification Division. Dr. R.H. Phlox, Member of the Research Advisory Committee, FAA. Dr. Randolph Lovelace II, Director of the Lovelace Clinic in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Louis N. Bain, Manager of the Aeronautical Center. William Schulte, Assistant Administrator, Office of General Aviation Affairs. Stanley Draper Sr., Managing Director of the Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce. Ralph Ball of Hudgens Thompson Ball & Associates, architects of the CARI building. Jack Clark, Chairman of the Aviation Committee, Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce. E. L. Gaylord, Executive Vice President and Treasurer of the Oklahoma Publishing Company. John Kilpatrick, President of the Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce. Tom Harris, Vice President and General Manager of Aero Commander Incorporated. Don White, Area Manager for the General Services Administration. The FAA Choraleers entertain. The first speaker of the day is United States Representative from Oklahoma, John Jarman.
Thank you, Dal. It's a great privilege to join with you in this momentous event in the history of our city and state in the development of this great FAA center in Oklahoma City. I'm particularly pleased to join in welcoming the administrator of the FAA, Mr. Halliday, to Oklahoma City again. He's been with us on a number of occasions before, and we're beginning to claim him as an Oklahoman. And the cooperation he's given all of us in the development of this center, knowing of the pride that we take in the work that's being done here, has been heartwarming to all of us in Oklahoma.
The second speaker is Congressman Albert Thomas of Texas.
You have one of the able and one of the ablest young public servants in public life today in your administrator, Mr. Halliday. It's been my privilege and my pleasure to work with a good many government administrators, but he is one of the best. He's making a tremendous sacrifice to serve all of us. You hang on to him.
Mr. Thomas is followed by Oklahoma Congressman Tom Steed.
There are very many reasons why it gives me a thrill and pleasure to have the privilege of being here today and participate with you in this ceremony. Not the least of which is that I'm sure we all have the same feeling when we see the dreams and the hard work and the things that go into these wonderful projects finally come to fruition. And we have the satisfaction of knowing that our great state has now acquired a new project which will make a contribution worthwhile to the advancement of a great industry and the welfare of humanity throughout the world. But I know you'll pardon me if I just take a moment to single out one particular reason why I have a special pleasure in being here today. And that's because in addition to the other very wonderful people here, we have with us a gentleman who is of that category of the warmest and closest and best friends that you get in life, and that's our good fellow Texan and our colleague from down at Houston, Congressman Al Thomas. I don't want to put him in a position of having misled you, but I'll charge it to his native modesty. But there's one thing about him that I think you ought to know. He has been my warm personal friend, and he's helped me all these years I've served there with him. I have found him to be one of the finest, ablest, smartest, most sincere, most dedicated public servants I've ever known in my life.
I think it'd be wonderful if our great publisher, Mr. Gaylord, would see that this all gets into the Houston papers.
The next speaker is Dr. Hilliard D. Estes, the Civil Air Surgeon of the Federal Aviation Agency. Dr. Estes was at one time director of the Civil Aeromedical Research Institute.
On the part of our staff,
we're certainly happy that all of you individuals are able to be with us today at what we might call our professional housewarming. As we take our position in this community, both in the community of the Aeronautical Center and that complex which represents very complicated procedures in air traffic control and various activities of the aviation field itself, we are proud to become part of that community. In addition, I am sure that on the part of every member of our professional staff, we look forward to being a member of your Oklahoma community. As time goes on, we will be able to pursue mutually beneficial courses, both in association with your community as it's represented in the professional realm, your medical school, your universities, other technical areas, and in associating with you as neighbors. I think there are so many people present today, both in the audience and among the members on the various platforms, that have contributed their strenuous efforts and great support in making it possible for us to have this facility as a working tool today, that most of you present could be said to have played a direct part in this effort. I thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Doctor. On behalf of the citizens of Oklahoma City, we want to welcome you and all of your staff here to be citizens with us in what we think is a very wonderful city in which to live and work.
Mr. Rensel introduces Senator Mike Monroney of Oklahoma, who will in turn introduce the feature speaker.
This is not only a great day for Oklahoma, but I think it is a great day for aviation of the entire world. For what we learn here will not only help every facet of aviation in the United States, but I'm sure that all the free nations of the world will benefit and will use and will prosper by the research that will be done in aerial medicine in this building. I'm sure nobody knows better than the Stanley Draper and the civic leaders, the Oklahoma City Airport Trust, and dozens of FAA leaders the long and difficult trip that we've had to this destination. Many men on this platform, in addition to your congressional guests, have played a very large role in this achievement, and we deeply appreciate all that they have done to join us in making this possible. My job is a rather simple one on this program, because it is to introduce a rather outstanding young and dedicated public servant who has long served his nation in many capacities. The Federal Aviation Agency's administrator is a combination of three-way parley of a California lawyer, pilot, and businessman. While he was born in Dallas, Texas, he no longer claims to be a native son, whether the Big D has withdrawn his right of his birth certificate when he refused to put instrumentation on an additional jet runway at Love Field or not. But anyway, it was long before this that he became a fugitive and went west and took his A.B. degree at Stanford University, and then shuttled across the country with the ease he later did as a jet pilot and received a law degree from the Yale School of Law.
Senator Monroney introduces Naji Halliday, the administrator of the Federal Aviation Agency.
The Honorable Naji Halliday.
Thank you, Senator Mike. It is a great pleasure to be with you here in Oklahoma. I don't know who to give the greatest credit for the weather to. I did fly up with Mr. Chairman Thomas, and he had a great deal of pleasure in that you share, I know, in Texas beating those Razorbacks last night, and Oklahoma beating some other team from some other state
And I'm sure that must have put a little spirit into that band, too. And we welcome that lilt they gave us, as well as the choraleers who gave harmony to this occasion. It's a very important day for us in the FAA. We welcome this opportunity to have you help us dedicate CARI, C-A-R-I, the Civil Aeromedical Research Institute. I know most of you have had an opportunity to walk through and see what this show is all about. We also hope that those who haven't will go through the open house today and tour the center. The Aeronautical Center, which is all about us here and which is growing with the needs of aviation, and a little bit ahead of it, I hope, is under the management of Mr. Bain, whom you've met earlier. It's the sort of parent or house mother to this CARI that Dr. Moeller is starting today. And so this building is the latest in the nest, you might say, of the Aeronautical Center. And with it, more FAA public servants are located here in Oklahoma City now than any place else. The center employs approximately 3,800 people, providing a payroll of $28 million a year, making it second only to Tinker Air Force Base as the largest industrial establishment in the state. The establishment and the growth of this center in Oklahoma City has played an important role in making aviation the third largest industry in the state after farming and minerals. And I know you realize the great contribution that your senators and congressmen, working as a very strong, fast-moving, and effective team representing you in Washington. To emphasize still more the importance of the Aeronautical Center to Oklahoma City, let me state that approximately 10% of the very hard-won and difficult-to-obtain $767 million FAA budget is spent either at this center or through it. Procurement, research, training, maintenance, and other important activities. And through these 25 flags you've seen here today, and the fine young men who carried them, you see Oklahoma City opening up in one of its many ways the window on the world. Recently I was in Rome at the International Civil Aviation Organization, where 98 countries, many of them just having become independent. And there I met men who had graduated not only from the FAA Academy, but from the friendliness, the hospitality, and that wonderful piece of America which is here in this state. They all remarked about not just what they learned technically, but how you made them feel important. Important as individuals, important as representatives of nations allied with us in the struggle to prove that freedom is the way of life. Now, you often hear about what we don't do in the FAA, and I think after 20 months view from the cockpit of the aviation community, I might say that I believe we have every right to be proud and grateful to our president for what he's done for aviation, partly through the FAA. We've set goals for 10 years ahead instead of waiting for traffic and technology to overrun us as we did in the past. We've designed a system which should have been designed many years ago and now be in effect. With the help of Congressman Thomas and these gentlemen here, we'll put that system into effect, and instead of providing safety in a defensive way, we will assure the minimum danger and delay through a modern system. The air safety record, I'm sure the President, and I know I feel, over the last 20 months is something to be very encouraged about, though not satisfied with. In every category of aviation, it is now safer to fly than it has been in any recent years. And this is the acid test of the work of this agency, the Civil Aeronautics Board, the Congress, and all those who are working on making the air safe and usable.
We've brought greater unity among the critics and crusaders who characterize the aviation community. We've cleared up, I believe, substantially the non-schedule safety record. There has not been a single accident in that area for almost a year now. And it has taken some hard work on the part of Senator Monroney and Senator Jarman to come out with a bill that would empower the Civil Aeronautics Board to reduce this somewhat difficult to control area of the air economy. We've cracked down on skyjacking, and we have, I believe, cracked down on skylarking, about which you've seen and heard so much recently. We've speeded through a very difficult, tortuous course between the flight engineers and the pilots and the airline management. We've speeded the end of feather birding in aviation well before it has paralyzed the airlines the way it has some of the railroads. We've reversed the false economy on airports, and just in time. And the leader of that effort, again, Mr. Aviation from Oklahoma, Mike Monroney, who produced with his colleague, Chairman Harris, on whose committee John Jarman serves, a new bill. And that bill has been given appropriations through the wise and skeptical and thoughtful work of Congressman Thomas, so that we will have the places to land and take off as the demand for aviation continues to rise. We believe that a sensible, though gradual, approach to the production of a supersonic transport has been started at last. Coming in, one hears a great deal about the big spenders in Washington. I say to you that in the last 20 months, we have been able to shave 5,000 jobs and well over $100 million off the planned program for the FAA, which I inherited on coming into office. The recognition of the individual is characteristic, I think, of aviation, and I know of President Kennedy and his administration. There seemed to be a tendency to prefer the large groups over the individual, the large airports over the small airstrips, a quick enforcement over fair hearings, and a centralization in Washington rather than a decentralization to the grassroots and the homes of aviation out in the country. And I believe we've been able to reverse that. Now you might say, yes, but there's much to be done, and I agree. And in this fall season, we know there is a great winter ahead. The winter of the 60s is going to be full of great prospects and difficult perils on all fronts, national and international, and all parts of the economy. And the question is whether we continue to advance aviation. And how can the President do it? He must do it with the thoughtful, skeptical, hard-headed help of men such as have been introduced to you here today. They are the leaders. They're the thinkers and the doers, not just the talkers about aviation. And I would say the thing that seems to me, after knowing them quite well for 20 months now, that characterizes Monroney and Thomas and Jarman and Steed and Draper and Kilpatrick and Rhodes and these dedicated men, these public executives, these managers of public affairs, is that they have their eyes on the future and they have their feet on the ground and they have tight fists. And I've found out how tight they are. They have big hearts for the people and tight fists for the taxpayers. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Senator Mike wonders very hard why we should be spending $31 million on a 2,000-mile-an-hour transport when we haven't yet developed a good local service airline to replace the DC-3. And he's right. And so every dollar that comes out on that supersonic transport comes out hard, because he feels that this is a project that ought to be placed in its right priority. Another, this building here, and this is the most important thing we're here today to discuss and to dedicate. This building came hard because Congressman Thomas and his colleagues have seen medical research abused. They've seen it duplicated. And they want to be very sure that this research is necessary, that it's not going to be research for research's sake, but that it's going to have a benefit for every cause. And so as we face the winter of 62 and the 60s, let's go ahead with this center. Let's recognize that here we train air traffic controllers from many countries as well as those from home. It's the depot for a global supply line of the FAA. It is our base for overhauling and maintaining aircraft. It's a repository of some very extensive and important records regarding airmen and safety. It is the base for our crews who are running the high altitude and intermediate altitude checking of our airways. It's a place for repair and development of air traffic control equipment. It's one of the largest data processing centers in the world. And now with CARI, with the Civil Aeromedical Research Institute, we will, for the first time, have the most modern tools to give those human factors in civil aviation the same attention that we've given the technical equipment and the technical factors. We owe a deep gratitude to the American taxpayer, as represented by Senator Maloney and Congressman Thomas and Jarman and Steed and their colleagues on the committees of the House, because it is from you that we get the opportunity to conduct this research. Now, when you have a distinguished and far-looking airport trust, such as the one headed by Phil Rhodes and Bob Luttrell, you have an initiative rather than a defensive. And I often wonder whether a conservative and a liberal makes any difference anymore. We all have to be conserving but liberal at the same time, because we cannot sit and wait for technology and traffic to overcome us. We must run out ahead of it carefully and precisely and productive. The dedication of this building today, of course, culminates the work of Hudgens, Thompson, and Ball, the architect-engineer, Al Harmon, the contractor, our own people in the FAA who have been working so hard to make this an exemplary installation. This is just the second important dedication here this year. Just a few weeks ago, the headquarters building, straight ahead of you, was dedicated for the Air Academy. Next year, we'll complete improved base maintenance facilities. And then, between us and that rotating radar beacon behind you, which is, in a sense, symbolic of the whole FAA, constantly turning 360 degrees as a sentinel of safety, we will soon, between this stand and that radar, have the Airman Records Building. When all of this is completed, we'll have almost 500,000 square feet of modern air-conditioned space in the center. And we'll be able to turn out a growing volume of work for the United States and the world. I'd like to spend just a moment or two talking about what will go on in that building behind me in front of you. Let's first distinguish CARI as a building and CARI as a concept. We are in decentralizing the agency from a single pyramid top in Washington, moving facilities and services that need to be and can be performed more effectively into the field. And that means that all our medical functions are going to be centered here in this building. In other words, not only research, but all of our other medical safety work. This building will house operational medical responsibilities as well as research ones. The Aeromedical Certification Division administers a program that evaluates the physical and mental qualifications of all civil airmen on a continuing basis. You can judge the importance of this job from the fact that the number of active civil airmen is rapidly approaching 500,000. Another division in this building with CARI is the Aeromedical Standards Division. This develops and refines the standards that our certification people and you, as the traveling public, and those innocent victims under the airplane must rely upon. It conducts human factors accident investigation in cooperation with the Civil Aeronautical Corps. In this new building, this staff will be able to use modern computer techniques to assure that we're bringing to bear the best lessons from experiences of the past. Another division devotes its effort to preventive medicine for our own employees. And then our Aeromedical Research Division, working closely with these other divisions and taking advantage of all the work that's gone on in the past through the library and through other means, does the job for all of civil aviation. Congress has charged FAA with maintaining and improving air safety, and human factors research plays an important role in carrying out this responsibility. Studies have shown that only 1 or 2 out of 10 Americans have ever flown in their lives. Many haven't done so because they just never had an occasion to leave home. After being here today, I can see why, with this weather and these fine people. But I'm sure there are many others who'd like to fly, but haven't because of apprehension, of anxiety about what keeps that thing up. Now, if our medical research, together with our research and development on hardware, can improve the air traffic control system, educate the pilots and the mechanics and the flight engineers and all the others involved, can raise the level of air safety, it's obvious that we're going to have more and more successful commercial air activity. This kind of research aims at eliminating accidents caused or contributed by human factors. It also keeps in touch with changing aviation equipment and flight conditions, which seem very rapidly to move up and sometimes surpass the man. Now, is all this worth it? Because we have a philosophy that for every benefit there's a cost, and we must match cost and benefit. And I think just in the humanity of it alone, this effort is worth it. In the first half of 1962, we had one major air accident in Jamaica Bay, New York, and then we had a sabotage accident out in Iowa, and we had 2 other air cargo charter flight accidents. 248 men, women, and children are no longer with us. In the same period, there were 178 fatal accidents in general aviation with a loss of 361 lives. It doesn't help much to say that this is one of the best safety records for 6 months in the history of aviation. We must concentrate on reducing that number to the absolutely irreducible minimum. It's not an acceptable record. We must improve it, we will improve it, and this building and these men working here will help us do it. The scheduled airlines carried more than 50 million passengers last year, many of them old or sick or infirm. They include pregnant women as well as children or infants. They must all of these people must have protection against high altitude decompression, for example. And we're working on ways to improve that, as you will see inside. We have a program underway to find ways of improving evacuation procedures, to improve the chances of passenger survival in a crash landing, such as the one in the Atlantic a few weeks ago. And so that cockpit hung over a swimming pool with a young man in a scuba diving outfit is not a game. That's not for fun. That's playing for keeps. And the marbles here are lives of our people. If we can make flight safer for passengers from one end to another, we know this will generate more jobs, more dividends, more companies, more productivity in the American economy. How can we make flying safer for the crewmen? We have working here neurophysiologists, and they have recently discovered a condition that affects a certain percentage of pilots known as flicker vertigo. Teenagers might think I'm talking about the twist, but under certain conditions, these authorities say, flickering light such as that caused by sunlight reflecting from propeller or rotor blades, especially in single-engine airplanes, can render a susceptible pilot unconscious. This could easily lead to a fatal accident which might have been prevented. Many pilots today take one or more preventive medical drugs. In many cases, the effects of these drugs on a man flying an airplane are unknown and unevaluated. But in the case of one recent accident in which 4 persons were killed, it was found that the experienced pilot had routinely been taking a number of chemicals which could well have accounted for his sudden and fatal bad judgment. We are building up research data which will help determine which drugs are safe for pilot use and in what quantities, as another example. We're relying heavily on the deep and broad research going on in the universities. Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., we're conducting, in close relationship to the work here, study as to at what point a pilot becomes functionally too old to fly a jet airliner or other commercial aircraft. We are hopeful, I say, of developing an index which would enable a given pilot to fly air carrier aircraft beyond his chronological age of 60, which is the mandatory and arbitrary upper limit at the present time, and also to determine those who are under 60 who should not be permitted to fly. Studies of our student and experienced controllers of the airspace have helped us greatly to determine who are the best candidates for this crucial job in the aviation community and what environment we can give them to do a better job. Just in the savings alone on the training of unfit personnel, we will recover some of the costs of the great CARI work that will be going on here. In the airplane itself, Human Factors Research is working to decrease pilot error in general aviation aircraft, and most small plane accidents are caused by pilot error. We can give him, I think, a better cockpit, a better instrument configuration, so that it will not take such an expert pilot to fly under bad weather conditions. The scope of the activities carried out here at CARI is far greater than I've mentioned, but I think these examples will give you a good idea of the value and importance of this work. We are terribly pleased and proud that of the 40 top professional people in this building, 25 of them are also on the staff of the University of Oklahoma Medical School and its medical center. We're also very glad that men like Dr. Phlox and Dr. Lovelace, who were introduced here today, and all of the heads of other aviation-connected medical research organizations are working as our medical research advisory panel, because we want to be sure that there is not here, for the sake of doing it, a redoing of someone else's work. We want to take every step to be sure that the men who walk in and out of this building each day are highly productive for you, the public, in terms of safety and human progress. Until now, no suitable facility for them to work existed. And now we'll really be able, in a systematic, comprehensive, organized way, to go after the human problems of aviation, in civil aviation particularly. The entire medical research expenditure through this building amounts to about $10 per year per airman in the United States. Approximately 6 cents per year for each user of the airspace, including the passengers. And just as military and aerospace researchers are exploring the special human factor problems of fighter pilots and astronauts, FAA is directing its attention to the same problems in civil aviation with what we believe will be important benefits to every user of the airspace. The pilot's code states, aviation is not inherently dangerous, but even more than the sea, it is terribly unforgiving of any carelessness, neglect, or incompetence. The FAA today is working in many areas, including aeromedical research, to eliminate carelessness, neglect, and incompetence from civil aviation, and to provide airmen and the public with the highest attainable level of air safety. And we can do it if we have help. And the men and women of this community, and the men and women of this center, and those who are about to enter these handsome portals are the keys to the success. And I know you would agree with me that Senator Mike Mulroney and the Oklahoma delegation, Draper, Kilpatrick, Clark, and the other fine leaders in this community are really doers and thinkers in this field. Senator Mulroney would not have been given the Wright Brothers Memorial Award for the most outstanding man in aviation last year if that had not been so. And I think it's important in these days where it's awfully easy to criticize and very difficult to move ahead, to know that the National Business Aircraft Association recently called him the most outstanding aviation leader of the year. These hardheads of big business who buy and fly airplanes and want them to produce revenue selected Mike Mulroney for this outstanding award, among his many others. In closing, I'd like just to express a bit of philosophy. As we face the fall of the 60s and all of the prospects and perils that are ahead, I believe, and I'm saying this to these doctors and their administrative associates, as well as to myself, that we have a great opportunity. Man can govern himself, and he can do it with dissent and debate and freedom. And so, to these doctors, to whom we're dedicating this building, our hopes, our great expectations, I say, let them have maximum creativity. Let them be productive. Let them go home every night saying, as an individual in a free society, I helped better mankind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jeeves. Very interesting and a very worthy dedication of this wonderful Civil Aeromedical Research Institute. And according to my program, the dedication is to be completed at exactly 3:40 p.m., which it is now. And I hereby claim that this place is dedicated. Therefore, in closing, on behalf of all of us here in Oklahoma City and in Oklahoma, we welcome Dr. Estes, Dr. Withers, citizens of our community. We promise to do everything we can to make this the greatest aeromedical research institute